Good afternoon, everybody. The look at potential defensive ends goes on. And we're going to take a look at two other guys that are almost definitely going to be first-round picks in this video, starting with Calijah Kancey of the Pittsburgh, I believe they are the Panthers. Also 22 years old, just like Jalen Carter, or will be when the season starts. Kancey is very interesting. Kancey's very interesting because I think that were it not for one particular player, a lot of people would dismiss this guy as not being a very viable NFL player. Or at the very least, he would be viewed as a much lower valued player were it not for one particular success story. And that success story is Aaron Donald. Kancey not only went to the same college as Aaron Donald, but he has a very similar body. He has a very similar frame. He has very similar physical limitations, and he plays in a very similar way. If you watch Aaron Donald tape from Pittsburgh and you watch the Kancey tape from Pittsburgh, you're going to see a lot of similar things. So, under normal circumstances, I think most teams would look at a guy like Kancey and say, okay, 6'1", 281 pounds, but his arms aren't even 31 inches, 30 and 5/8. And then also his hands are small. I don't know if that's that big of a deal, but those short arms and just being kind of small in general, most GMs would probably go, oh, that guy doesn't have a chance. But the success of Aaron Donald proves that this is possible. You can be successful despite these physical limitations. And Kancey was a guy who excelled at the combine. Now, he only really did one drill. He did the 40-yard dash, but he lit the world on fire. This was one of the big winners from the combine. 4.67 40, 10.64 10-yard split. The guy's burst is crazy. His top-end speed is great. For a guy of this size, even though I said he's undersized, which he is, the fact that this is an interior defensive lineman who can move like this, yeah, that's going to get attention regardless of anything else. You look at the big boards, I think the big boards are a little bit inaccurate here. This guy's going to go in the teens, and some of the big boards haven't totally caught on yet because the combine just happened a little bit ago. PFF has caught on. They have him at 13. But then everyone else has him in the second round, except for Tankathon. They have him at 25. The database has him at 25 as well, by the way. I think this guy's going to go in the teens, maybe in the early 20s. And, I mean, the numbers, unlike a lot of players who we're going to be looking at in this series, the numbers speak for themselves. Over the last 2 years, this guy has played in 23 games and has 27.5 tackles for loss and 14.5 sacks. So this guy's making plays out there. So the production is clear. He hasn't played for any great defenses, but they haven't been bad defenses either, number 51 and number 42 overall. So Kancey, basically, look, I could make this evaluation really short by just saying he's Aaron Donald. He's got a phenomenal burst off the snap, just blows into the line. When I watched some of the tape of him, it's like he's covered in butter. He's just slipping off these blockers at the snap, man. He's just slipping off blockers, getting to the quarterback or getting to the running back. It was kind of crazy. He's just, it really does sometimes look like he's covered in butter when he's playing. And he's, despite being so small, he is not afraid. He will throw himself into battles with offensive linemen that are much bigger than him with no fear. He does not concern himself with the fact that he is frequently much smaller than the guys he's going up against down there. And because he's small, he's always going to win the leverage battle pretty much, right? There aren't going to be a lot of offensive linemen shorter than him, right? He's constantly in the backfield, constantly beating his man. That's the thing that really just stands out here. This guy is slippery, and he gives high effort, and what he did at the combine was historic. A man of this size who plays this position with a 4.67 40 is pretty historic. That being said, just because Aaron Donald did it doesn't mean everybody can do it, right? Like, Russell Wilson was able to have great success in the NFL despite being a shorter quarterback, but that doesn't mean every short quarterback is going to be able to do it. He is small, and that wouldn't be as big of a deal if his arms weren't so short. And when he's going up against NFL talent, like NFL offensive linemen, those short arms are going to be a problem at times. And while he is strong and while he's stronger than his size suggests, he is somebody who might get pushed around at the NFL level. So this is one of those things where there is a gamble here. There are three defensive ends, 3-4 ends in this draft who I think will go in the first round. All three of them contain significant risks. Kancey could easily end up being a guy who just never really manages to excel against NFL level talent the way he did in college. And it's not hard to imagine that he'll end up being one of those guys that was a much better college player than a pro player. He basically, I think the best way to put it is he needs to be perfect technically to overcome his physical limitations, can have no physical lapses. Nevertheless, despite him being a workout warrior, I do believe the comp to Aaron Donald at least contains a kernel of truth to it. And I think this guy will succeed at the next level. I like him a lot. And I would consider him, if we traded to the teams, I would consider taking him. Beyond that, hell yeah. So that's my take on Kancey. Now let's move on to the other defensive end type player who I think could go in the first round. Brian Bresee of Clemson. 21 years old when the season starts, by the way, so still very young. Now, I don't know if Bresee is an amazing fit for a 3-4 defense, but I think he'll be fine. This is a guy who you could really argue is meant to be a 3-tech in the NFL and a 3-tech only, but I believe the talent is enough to where he'll find success regardless. Bigger guy, 6'5.5", almost 300 pounds, 32.5-inch arms, decent, not great, not bad. 10.25-inch hands, perfectly fine. Had a pretty good combine performance. 4.8640 for a 300-pounder is good. His 10-yard split shows explosiveness. That's very good for a man of his size. 29-inch vert, okay. 22 bench press numbers, fine. And basically every big board has him going in the late first right now. PFF has him at 20. They have him at the highest point. Sports Illustrated has him going, I guess technically the first pick in the second round, but pretty much everybody has him in the late first. The database has him at 23rd overall. I think that's probably pretty fair. I put 3 years of his numbers on screen because I understand that you need to go back to 2020 to kind of understand the appeal of this guy. 2021, he only played 4 games. 2022, he played, but there was definitely him trying to work himself back into game shape. And it's not like the numbers are going to be great regardless, but I did want to capture as much relevant data as I could here. So Brian Bresee, this most recent year, he also had to deal with his sister passing away tragically, which was definitely impacting his ability to play and his ability to play well. That's something that he had to work past, on top of the fact that he was working off a major injury. I think it was an ACL. There was a very small sample size in 2021, and then in 2022, the sample size we got was not that great. It's also somewhat notable, I guess, if you really want to be pedantic here, that the 1 year Clemson actually had a hyper-elite defense was the year he barely played. I don't really think that much of it. But yeah, either way, this guy's not a huge stat guy. But if you go back to 2020, he was making plays in the backfield, man. 6.5 tackles for loss in 11 games, 4 sacks. If he had progressed the way you would have expected Brian Bresee to progress based off where he was in 2020, then you probably would have expected him to become a dominant interior defensive lineman, and then the injury and the off-field stuff prevented it from happening. Nevertheless, it could happen in the NFL now that he's hopefully past all of that, and I continue to like him a lot, even though this is another guy. There are real risks here. He's got great penetration skills. He's a twitchy athlete. He sheds blocks well. One thing that I noticed when I was watching him play was it seemed like there was a very cerebral element to it. Like he would wait offensive linemen out. It was almost like a basketball thing where he would hesitate one way and then go the other way and just slip right past him, which, hey, for a 300-pounder, that's pretty impressive. He played different positions along the defensive line at Clemson. Like a lot of these guys, they do 0-tech stuff, 1-tech, 3-tech, 5-tech. They're all over the line. And I mean, like the combine indicates, he moves very well for a 300-pounder. He'll chase down plays from behind along the line of scrimmage. He'll be the strong side defender and pursue the play on the line of scrimmage. He's up and down the line making plays all over the place against the run and the pass. So there's a lot to like about his athletic profile. There's a lot to like about his combination of size and athleticism. But the issues are mostly circumstantial, I think. He did not get a chance to develop over the last 2 years, really, because of injuries and because of the off-field incident with his sister, where that definitely affected him. That definitely had an impact on his progression in the most recent year in particular, I think. As for stuff that is more, actually to do with the player, he's tall, which means sometimes offensive linemen out-leverage him. Like, he's almost 6'6". At 6'6", you get out-leveraged sometimes. So he's got to learn how to get his pads level lower, as they often say. And he can struggle to control the line of scrimmage a little bit. Sometimes he's not necessarily somebody who you want to have, like, absorbing double teams. He's somebody that you want to have penetrating. Not somebody who's necessarily going to be like, okay, I'm going to hold stout in the middle here. Nobody's pushing me off this spot. I'm going to plug this run gap. No, he's somebody that you do want penetrating for sure. But at the end of the day, here's the thing. I think if Bryan Bresee had played all of 2021 and 2022 without getting hurt, he probably would have developed into a guy who was a surefire top 10 pick. As it stands, you can probably get him at 20, maybe even a little past that. So I'm looking at this situation where you have an opportunity to get a guy who should have gone in the top 10. I think that's fair. I think that's where his career was headed a couple years ago. And you're doing it at 20? I think that's worth the risk here. I do. So, not my favorite. I do like Kancey better. I do think Kancey's a better prospect. I would rather have Kancey than Bresee. But I do believe that Kancey will probably be gone, and Bresee will probably be there at 20. And I would make him one of my prime targets at the 20th selection. All right, that's it for my other day one defensive ends. More videos coming later. Go Hawks.